Well, one of the things you're a digital guy, right?
To an
Okay,
extent. So supposedly, yes,
yeah, you understand the internet. All right.
yes,
The other part of it is you understand youth. Done a lot of youth coaching and things like
yeah,
that. And as we mentioned before the podcast briefly, my son has played at a pretty high level in eSports.
yeah,
Okay. And there's continuously failure in game getting better. But
yeah,
even, as he always said, you never know how good you are till you go online,
right,
okay, and
right,
play against the other people out there. The amount of what I would call, he calls it cancerous behavior,
yeah,
okay, and
right,
internet thugs and that
sure,
type of stuff. I'm amazed that they have that resilience to keep coming
yeah.
up. Is that just special for that, or does it,
No,
or is it
sorry.
the kids at that age getting accustomed to be able to build that resilience?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the themes of the book is that's a little bit of a myth out there that resilience is something that you just have and you don't have. Like Joe, you're a resilient guy. I'm not. Like that's a mistake. That everyone has the ability to be resilient, and it's something that you cultivate, and it's something you essentially it's like a muscle that you build. And one of the themes or one of the findings of the book is that sort of the more practice you get in developing that, facing resistance, dealing with it, dealing with guys you don't like, and having to show back up or whatever the form is. That it's like a muscle that gets stronger. The more opportunities you have to put yourself in a situation where you have to be resilient, the better off you're going to be long term, because then you can draw on that.
I always try to think of how in esports, especially in the digital world, there seems to be, you can say anything when you're hiding behind a typewriter. There's
Yeah.
not that personal contact, right?
Right.
But today in the business world, it is also a lot you can hide behind that typewriter. I mean, the flaming on Twitter, okay, or on
Yeah. Yeah.
Facebook, or this election is famous for it, okay.
100%.
Of what the comments. We've never had such a vocal, I would say, opinions
Yeah.
on
It's a
social.
polarizing time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a polarizing time, exactly. How does your book and that winning at failure help that polarization? Does it? I mean, does it help you understand it better at all?
I think so. I mean, I think I've certainly been thinking a lot about the election since and how it relates to my book. And one of the things that I've thought about, or one of the sort of common themes of the book, is every disappointment requires introspection. It requires you to look inside and take inventory of sort of what you did or didn't do. And I think that there's a little bit of one of the things the internet is famous for is sort of just throwing blame at other people. And I think that's really cancerous. I feel like just throwing your frustrations out at other people can be really counterproductive. And not to say that there aren't opportunities to be frustrated with outside forces, but I've looked at the election like, okay, what did I miss about this? What can I learn from it in terms of how people think and how I look at the world? And so I've made it sort of double down on this point of taking sort of a self inventory of how I can be better, and especially in my mind, because it's such a polarizing time, I've decided I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to be part of that sort of collective dissension out there. So I want to be someone who helps bridge gaps. So the book, in my mind, talks a lot about being honest with yourself and looking at where you can be better. And I think that's something that we could all stand to do right now. And especially like you said about people's behavior on the internet. I bet a lot of people who are spewing a lot of the hate on the internet right now are the people who would really benefit from taking a good look at themselves and asking, what they could do to be contributing in a positive way as opposed to a negative way.
I want to mention the part about going back to gaming a little bit. Is my son there got kicked from a team that was invited to a big tournament. He created a team, and they fell short of getting a direct invite, so they had to go through qualifiers. Okay, so he flew, he was getting ready. He was going to fly over there without an invite. And if you get an invite, you get your trip paid for, okay?
Right.
And he's
sure.
he's going to Sweden, all right?
Very cool.
To DreamHack. And he, and I said to him, and this is like between his sophomore and junior year of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell him, okay, I said, if this trip, you're spending your savings right now to take this trip, okay,
mm-hmm.
and if you don't make it, you're going to come home, and the priority college is going to rise a little bit because you're going to have
mm-hmm.
to answer to me.
Right.
Okay. And he goes, yeah. I guess, do you understand that? He goes, yeah. I got it. I said, okay. I said, you're willing to do that, huh? He says, yeah, I need to. Okay, I need to prove to myself that I can do it. He goes over, his plane gets canceled. His plane is he gets there with no sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, plays through these 1-game qualifiers.
Right.
All right, which is just torturous. Okay, it's unbelievable what you go through in this big room of computers. It's the biggest LAN event in the world, to give you an idea.
Wow.
Okay, but through all these computers and stuff, he gets to the final game. He loses.
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
Right.
And I mean, he hasn't slept for like 48, 60 hours or something at this point. Okay. It's like, no wonder you lose and stuff. And, of course, my heart is just sinking for him, right?
Right.
I can't watch the qualifiers, but I can, I get to see the results.
Right.
And so he did it. So they go through the invite and the tournament happens, and then they have a all-star tournament afterwards.
Uh-huh.
And I believe he was the only person selected in they formed like six or eight teams to play in this all-star event. It was all picks and everything. And I believe he was the only person, if my memory serves me right, picked out of the non-qualified teams.
Wow.
Okay.
Very cool.
He got to play. His team won the all-star tournament.
How about that?
And the next week is when he signed with an organization with a sporting contract. Okay, and became a member of what I would call, a larger team.
Right.
And what I and to me, that was like, what was in that? I mean, that's a failure that's just about unbelievable to be able to bounce from, right?
Sure. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I think a couple things that thought to my head is that there's a quote that I love. I'm a big hockey guy. It's Wayne Gretzky's quote is, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that applies to pretty much anything. So your son's decision to go over there and pay for his own trip, and even though he wasn't assured, was him taking a bit of a risk. And at some point, he made the calculation in his head that, okay, I'm willing to take that risk because the benefits of what could happen outweigh the possible disappointments. And he realized he probably, in his own mind, in a small way, probably made the calculation. Okay, if it doesn't work out, I'll be okay. I'll get over it. There'll be I might be bummed out, but he took a risk knowing that it was worth it, and it pays off. And that's one of the things that I try to stress in the book is that it's not so much about just how you deal with failure on the back end when something doesn't go your way. It's also when you're throwing yourself into something, you need to make that calculation that don't be so afraid of it not working out, because something good is going to come from it. It might work out perfectly, which is obviously the optimal outcome, but even if it doesn't work out perfectly, you're going to take something positive away from whatever risk you're taking or venture you're throwing yourself into or game you're playing.
So win at losing isn't just about learning from your mistakes. We need to learn from our winning too, right?
Yeah, completely. It's two-sided. Again, like it's one of these things where it's not just reactive, it's sort of proactive, which is that ideally people will come away feeling emboldened because they'll feel like, okay, I'm gonna give this a try, because if it doesn't work out, there's something that's gonna be good about it. And then the other side of it is, like you said, it's a little bit about winning. It sounds almost counterintuitive, but don't be deceived by success either. As much as we don't want to be totally bummed out by our failures, I'm also a big believer that when things go swimmingly great, don't overvalue that either. There might be something that just bounced your way, or it might be hiding a larger flaw. And so, there's a whole belief that success can be, in some ways, counterproductive, which I realize is weird, in the sense that you don't develop the skills that you need to develop because things have just gone your way so far, and you point to success as validation of your talent, when really you want to look at success as a validation of your effort and your hard work.
I think of these sports guys that are, let's say, even in eSports, but even in baseball or basketball,
totally,
that are the stars, but never win a championship.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the definition of success, maybe? Okay.
Right.
You got a thing. It's like they really hold that championship, that team effort so great.
Yeah.
But they're only 1/5 of the puzzle, right?
Sure.
So,
well, yeah. Go ahead.
So how does that help in the book? Because I mean, you don't talk so much about teams. You talk a lot about individuals there.
Right. Like certainly from a team standpoint, I talk a lot about a team loses 2 games over the weekend. I guarantee you that practice on Monday night will be their most productive practice. Because suddenly everything comes into focus of what they need to be better. We didn't do this well enough. We didn't do that well enough. Well, we're going to work on those 2 things. From a team standpoint, as a coach, I always find that you always have kids' attention on the aftermath of failure, in the aftermath of losing, because suddenly it's crystallized in their mind. Oh yeah, we're not that good. We actually do need to work on this. Whereas they win 2 games over the weekend, suddenly they're not really interested in practicing that hard because they've got it all figured out. Everything's going great. So certainly that's one part of how the sort of lessons of the book apply, which is that losing helps really illuminate the areas that you need to address the most.
I have to ask you this because you brought that up about the teams, and and I thought you made some good points there. But in esports, okay, you're governed by the 5 guys on the team. Really dictate most of that.
Yeah.
The coaching is not has any real decision making within the team.
Right.
Okay. So you have whatever the age, from 16 to 24 to even there's a few 27-year-old guys out there, but not many, that really govern the team, manage your team. And when losing occurs, it's really difficult in esports to keep teams together.
What? How so? Just in the sense that there becomes sort of infighting, or
there's infighting, and one guy gets kicked because it's always some other guy's issue, right?
Right.
And and you think needs to be some maturity within a team, and that's an old guy talking.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'm not sure, but from your experience and looking at these different failures and things like that, that cohesiveness of a team, is that really something you got to go through failures and learn to grow as a team?
I do. I feel like certainly the teams that go through adversity in some form or another end up being much stronger in the long run. When things go great right from the start, it's obviously an easy time, but they're not really learning anything about each other's character. Whereas when a team, you hear these stories about teams that lose championships one year and then come back to win it the next year. Well, that's often a function of they grew from the losing experience. I mean, the classic example that I reference in the book is the Chicago Bulls. When they were in the late 80s, they lost in the conference finals to the Detroit Pistons every year. And part of the reason that they became the dominant team that they became was because of the fact that they learned from that loss and then went on to win, and realized that it was sort of such a character shaping experience for all of them.
But I'll go back and I want to challenge that a little bit, because they switch players, they switch moments and stuff, with that to it was only growing as a team, but also finding other pieces of the puzzle. And I think that's what happens maybe a little quicker in esports, but you're still looking for them other pieces to fit better, okay? And it's that core group, the Pippen, the Jordan, okay?
Sure.
That stayed together, but they were always constant flux, it seems, in the other 2 or 3 positions. Is that and so?
Yeah.
Where does that fit? I mean, is there any truth to that, or?
Sure. I mean, ultimately, what happens is, you make improvements, or you address flaws in your game. So from the team standpoint, like those Bulls teams had some. I'm trying to think about those teams, but they had some guys who were weak in the middle, so they got rid of those guys, and so the Bulls benefited from that experience because they sort of were able to sift through flaws in their lineup and identify where they needed to be stronger. But it also helped guys like Jordan and Pippen and say, okay, well, I need to be a better teammate. I need to help bring these guys along more, because if I don't bring them along, we're not going to be better in the end. So those losses help shape them. the other side of course, is there was some guy on that team that I talk a little bit about this in the book too, which is like there are guys who were on those late '80s teams that got kicked to the curb. What happens to those guys? Well, those guys benefited from the experience as well, not in the most tangible ways where they won championships, but they probably said, "Well, I got the Bulls cut me this year. What can I take away from it? Where was I coming up short? How was I not contributing? And how can that hopefully make me a better player for the next team I play for?"
Yeah, but I think I'm going to throw something out there, but I think it maybe was more about Jordan and Pippen learning, okay?
Sure.
Because those cast of characters, I hardly remember the cast of characters that they went through. And I'm sure Bulls fans will call me out. I mean, there's Rodman, Kerr, but who was the point guard that Kerr substituted for? I don't remember. So I think it may be, a lot about that core and what they learned and how to deal with the others and bring them in.
Of course. I mean, again, there's no question that, and Jordan talks about it a lot. I use Jordan in sort of two different ways in the book, but certainly a big part of sort of him becoming the player he became was from earlier failures he had, both, as a high school player getting cut from his varsity, which is a famous story, but also when he was with the Bulls and they were losing every year to the Pistons, he had to take a look at those teams and be like, God, what are they doing right that we're not doing? And what can we take away from that and learn from it?
No, I think you're so right. I apologize. I've ran over. I could go on and on, Sam, with you. I think there's some great stories there. And the book is full of stories. It's a nice, comfortable read, but it's another one that I think you'll go back and in the old days, we'd tear out a couple pages, okay? Or at least dog-ear them, all right? Because I think it's got some great points in it that you'll reread and carry around for a while to reinforce a few of the ideas. So what's upcoming for you? And tell me where they can find the book and a little bit if there's a book site or anything. Yeah,
well, the book is called Win It Losing. You can get it on
Can you show it to me?
Oh, yeah, I have it right here.
You got a copy?
Oh, it just conveniently happens to be here.
Okay.
There's the copy. So that's just an early copy of it. But yes, Win It Losing, it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, your local bookstore. Also, SamWeinman.com is you can learn all about the book and me as well. I hope it out talking to people about this topic for a while, because I feel like it's, in addition to wanting to sell books, I feel like it's a hugely valuable sort of lesson that people can benefit from, which is that losing has great opportunities in it.
I encourage people to read it because my first read through it, I sat through it, I said, oh, it's a pretty good book. But then it was like, God, what was that story? And I remembered and I went back to it. So that was
great.
That was kind of cool because I wanted to go back to it a couple times. A good sign of a book that it just doesn't end up on the shelf and collect dust back there. Okay?
I hope so. That's good. Yeah, I'd like to see people come back to it.
So, okay, Sam, I would like to thank you very much. This podcast will be available in the Business 901 iTunes Store and the Business 901 blog site. So thanks all the listeners for listening. Thank you, Sam.
Take care, Joe. Thank you.